Welcome everyone, thanks for tuning in. And today I have a really special session with a gorgeous client slash former client of mine who has made some really beautiful and substantial inroads into healing her patterns, particularly anxious attachment, which we are going to talk about, and has since gone on to become a beautiful coach to other women on their journey to soulmate love. So we've got lots to unpack and lots to talk about. And I'm just thrilled to have you on because you're such a gorgeous soul.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Peta. So much gratitude to be here today.
So can you just introduce yourself to the ladies? And when we started working together in
May last year.
Tell us a bit about sort of where you got to at that point, and what was it that prompted you to reach out, and why was it that you decided to connect with me at that time?
Absolutely. So a bit of kind of backstory is 4 years ago, I got divorced. I'd been in a 14-year marriage, and I spent the first probably 2 years of that dating from a place with absolutely no awareness of my attachment style, no awareness of what was going on for me, no awareness of my patterns. And it felt like that emotional roller coaster. It was just up and down. I just strapped myself in. I was thrown about all over the place. There was massive highs, but with that came massive lows as well. And I got to a point about 2 years in where I decided, right, I need to start doing something about this. I want to start, first of all, working on the relationship with myself, because I don't really know who I am anymore. I think when you've been in a relationship for that length of time, you almost forget, who am I as an individual? And I was 19 when I entered into that relationship. So I was really, really young. And I did some general coaching more around who I was as a person, what my values were, what I enjoyed. And that really helped to transform and shift my mindset around the relationship with myself. And I decided at that point that I was going to start to train as a coach so I could go on and help others. So I went through my coach training, and when I reached out to you, Peta, I was probably about 4 or 5 months post coach qualification. And what was happening for me was I had awareness around my anxious attachment. So I knew that I was anxiously attached. I could recognize the patterns that were coming up for me, but I didn't seem to be able to break them. I was still getting very excited by men who are emotionally unavailable. I liked the thrill of the chase. I liked that feeling of I'm going to make them want me. And inevitably, it always ended up at the point where they were like, no, see you later. I'd started to get emotionally invested, and then I was really upset. And on the flip side of that, the men that I was meeting that were more emotionally available, that were more securely attached, that were consistent, that were stable, I just felt nothing at all on the first dates, and I instantly dismissed them. I was like, no, boring, not interested. And I'd almost told myself this story of, you're only attracted to avoidant men. And I was reinforcing and playing that pattern out over and over again. And I can actually remember the moment that I got in touch with you, and I'd met a guy off Bumble. We'd been messaging. It was already obvious that he was avoidant. And I was like, oh, whatever, like, I'll just meet him. It'll be absolutely fine. I'm sort of going into this with my eyes open. And basically we met and we slept together, and then he left the next day. And there was just this shift. And I was like, I am not doing this anymore. I do not want this to be my reality. And although I have all the awareness around what's going on, I can see the dynamic playing out, and I don't seem to be able to change this on my own. And that's when I reached out to you, and I'd been following you for a couple of years. I think it was your work that had really made me realize that I had an anxious attachment style, along with the work I was doing with a counselor at the time. And it was just like, the time is now. Like, I am not putting up with my own bullshit anymore. Like, this has to change.
And it usually is often some situation that like a little bit of a heartbreak or a disappointment that makes us really double down and say, that's it, never again. And I just want to obviously honor and recognize you for making that empowered decision, because the course of your dating life and even the way that you feel about yourself has really taken a different trajectory since then, which is phenomenal. Tell us a little bit about what's changed for you now.
So what has changed for me now is really doing like the deeper healing work that we did together on my anxious attachment style. So to go back to the significant traumas, I guess, in previous relationships, really start to heal those and break that energetic bonds, because I think so often we can go through and we're like, oh yeah, I'm over that. That was like years ago. But energetically, we're still connected to that person and it's stopping us from moving forward. So I think really doing the deeper healing, getting also super clear on what do I want in a partnership? Like what is important to me? What is the stuff that I've been seeing is important that actually is negotiable, that can be compromised on? And what is the stuff that I know I absolutely want? Because I think it's very difficult to attract in who you want to be with when you don't know what that is. Like if you're confused, it's sending out those kind of mixed messages. So gaining the clarity on like what it is I want. And I think the other thing is just having the confidence to communicate my wants, my needs really, really early on. So before even meeting somebody, making sure, right, let's make sure we're on the same page. Because I think what can happen is there's that fear of, I don't want to be too much. I don't want to scare him away. Like we can't be asking these questions before we've even met in person. But the bottom line is it's really important to make sure that you are on the same page to begin with. It's not that you're saying, oh my goodness, like I want a relationship and you're the person I'm going to be in a relationship with. It's just asking like, are you here for something more casual? Are you dating with the view to this being something longer term? And what I found is that is actually super well received. Like the guys that just want casual are like, look, I just want something casual, and you can let that go. You've not invested any energy. And the guys that are looking for the same thing as you are just really grateful that you've initiated that conversation, and they can be like, yeah, you know, this is what I'm kind of looking for. And it's not that you're saying, oh, this is going to happen with us. It's just saying, are we on the same page in terms of what we want from the dating experience?
That's a beautiful example of someone with anxious attachment. We actually find that difficult to do because we're so sitting in this place of feeling a little bit nervous about how we're going to be received and is he going to reject me? And we're just really way too reserved with how open we are about our own desires, and almost being the one that does the choosing rather than sort of sitting back and waiting to get chosen. Now, I'm curious, as far as your coaching, your experience with coaching together, what were some of the things that you found really useful, or how did you find having a coach yourself in this area of your love life really benefited you?
So I think for me, it's really doing that deeper healing work that, to be honest, is really, really difficult to do on your own. So some of the processes that we did around like subconscious reprogramming, the deeper meditations to allow sort of feelings and memories to come up. And I think we also did like a radical forgiveness process as well, which was super useful for letting go of some of the resentful emotions that I was still carrying from my previous marriage. So I think those are the elements where you can say, oh, you know, I can meditate at home myself. I can sit and listen to a meditation. But when you're doing that in real time with somebody, for me, that's much more powerful. And I find that I'm able to go a lot deeper than if I was just kind of sitting listening to something that was recorded. And that's not to disregard that can still be super useful, but it was definitely the deeper healing. It was also being able to have someone who was there when things were coming up as they were happening. So, okay, I'm connecting with this guy and this is kind of what's coming up for me. And just having somebody to help me, I guess, reflect on the experiences that I was having, and also connecting to what is it that I really want? Because again, with an anxious attachment style, although I am much more towards the secure sort of end of the spectrum now, there will still be times when that anxious feel like thoughts and feelings come up, and just being able to have somebody that I knew I could go to, that I trusted, to say, hey, like, this is what's happening. Can we like reflect on this? Or, you know, what are your insights? And you just had so many powerful insights around what was going on for me, but also in terms of relationships and partnership in general, that really got me thinking about, okay, like, what is my reality now and how do I want that to be moving forwards?
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And I'm just so proud of you, and so love that you were so inspired by this work and helping women in this field, and how much it helped you and changed you as well, that now you've taken a lot of the wisdom that you've learned on your journey to soulmate love and the work that we've done, and are able to impact the girls that you work with in a beautiful way to help them on their soulmate journey. Tell us a little bit about the clients that you're working with now, what sort of things you're finding is really helping them. What are some of the mistakes they're making, things they're finding?
I think one of the big things for them is just having that confidence to, first of all, know what they want and need in a relationship, but also to be able to ask for it. So again, coming back to that kind of clear, honest, authentic communication. And I think that's such a practical skill to be able to learn, because we need it before we start dating, we need it when we're dating, and then we need it when we're in a relationship. So just being able to, first of all, give them the awareness that a lot of the time it is their attachment style that's causing them to be stuck in these patterns of behavior. I think with all this work, for me, what this comes down to really is the relationship with yourself. So enabling them to have a relationship with themselves where they are open, where they're honest, where they're authentic, where they're compassionate and they're kind. And they're showing all of that to themselves first. Because until you can show up in that way for you, it's very difficult to attract that into your life, because I guess we attract what we're being. So it's turning it back onto, okay, how are you showing up for you? Are you allowing yourself to feel what's coming up for you? Or are you staying so distracted and so busy that you're just pushing it all down so you don't have to deal with it? So coming back to that as well. So what is the relationship like with yourself, and working on that? Because once we've got that in place, it makes it a lot easier moving forwards to, okay, what do you want in a partnership? What are you looking for? What are you wanting to attract in? And then we can start going through some of the practical strategies for when you're out dating, because it can be a drain. Like, dating can be an energy drain if you're not doing it with intention and awareness.
We all absolutely love the practical and to fill up our toolkit with more practical things, but there's actually two parts to what I want to ask you. Firstly, I know that you do a lot of work with your clients around their relationship with themselves. From a practical perspective, what does that look like? Because we talk about, you know, prioritizing ourselves, self-care, you know, loving on ourselves, having respect for ourselves. That's all great, but what does that actually mean about what I can do to improve my relationship with myself from a practical standpoint?
Absolutely. So I think from a practical point, it's really useful to look at, are there any small commitments or promises that I want to make to myself that I'm going to commit to keeping? And for me, how that looked was I decided that I was going to spend 5 minutes a day doing yoga and 5 minutes a day doing meditation, which doesn't sound like life-changing stuff. You're like, yeah, whatever, Claire, yoga and meditation. But what I found was when I made that promise to myself that I was going to do that and I stuck to it, what that did was that actually built my self-trust, my self-confidence, and my self-esteem, because what I was doing was sending that message of, you're worthy of this time. You keep the promises that you make to yourself. You can trust yourself to make a commitment and actually follow through. So something I would have a think about is there something that you've been wanting to do, something to implement, whether it's meditation, whether it's yoga, whether it's journaling, whether it's just spending 5 minutes sitting with yourself every day, allowing your feelings to come up. What is one small promise or one small habit that you could start to implement and stick to? Because once you have really implemented that is a habit, what you've also done is you've built that self-trust. And I know it's if someone had said this to me in the beginning when I started a daily routine, I would have been like, oh, whatever, like I'm just getting up 10 minutes earlier. Like that's got nothing to do with my self-confidence or how much I trust myself. But I promise it really does make a difference. And I think the other thing is getting into the habit of like checking in with yourself. How am I feeling in this moment? How am I feeling right now? And we want to start doing this on a regular basis, not just when we've been massively triggered and we feel really, really upset, because we know we're upset. We can obviously feel that. But at other points during our day, like if something just starts to rise up, okay, let's just take a minute. Let's take a deep breath. Let's check in with, first of all, how am I feeling in this moment? Let's start to articulate what's going on for us, rather than just going, oh, that feels uncomfortable, I'm just going to busy myself with something else, I'm just going to distract myself. And then start asking yourself, like, what do I need in this moment? Because I think when we're anxiously attached, we can be so far removed from our own wants and needs, because we assume that our emotional needs aren't going to get met. So that, well, there's no point even connecting with it. It's no point even really thinking about it. And just starting to get into that habit of how am I feeling and what do I need in this moment? And then giving that to yourself. So again, bringing that focus back into the relationship with you. And it might look like making yourself a cup of tea or reading a book for 5 minutes, going for a walk around the block. Maybe you need to like really move your body, like jump up and dance or go for a run or a jog. Or it might just be giving yourself a hug, like giving yourself some comfort and some self-compassion. And again, I just think in today's society, there can be this hustle culture if we just need to push harder and harder and harder and do better. And we almost use criticism as a stick to beat ourselves. And I think bringing in self-compassion is so powerful when we can do that and just really be like, what do I need? Like if this was your best friend in front of you and she was saying that, what would you say to her? What would you do? You'd probably give her a cuddle and say, you're fucking amazing, babe. Like everything's going to be okay.
Yeah, and yet, we don't do that, do we? We're like, oh, you idiot, you loser, what were you thinking? God, you mess everything. Like, yeah, our inner critical voices can be really, really nasty sometimes. We would never speak to other people the way that we have this internal voice going, right?
Absolutely. And I think that's another big part of the work that I do with my clients and the women I work with is self-compassion. Like, let's start bringing that in. And it feels really uncomfortable at first when we're not used to doing that. There can be resistance and just knowing that that's normal. But again, it's a practice, it's a tool, it's a muscle. We need to flex it. We need to be flexing that self-compassion muscle every day. And that's how it becomes stronger. And there's been studies done that have shown that the more self-compassionate you are, the more resilient you are as well. And that's going to put you in a much better position when you're out there dating, when you're out there, when you're in a relationship, because you've built up your inner resilience. You know that whatever happens, you've got you and you can get through it and it'll be okay. And I think that can make a huge difference to how we experience dating in particular, because dating when you have an anxious attachment style is like that. And I think often those who have a secure attachment style don't quite get it. They're like, oh, it's cool, like it's all right, like, yeah, it doesn't occupy my mind all the time and I just kind of get on with it. And you'll probably find that the people that are securely attached maybe don't talk so much about dating because there's not so much of the drama, I guess, or the things that need to be unpacked. So I guess it's really to say that when you can come to a more secure place, instead of it feeling like this, yeah, there's still going to be ups and downs, but it's probably more like this rather than the, oh God, oh no, here we go again.
Yeah. There's definitely a reason why the anxious attachment style is often referred to as anxious preoccupied, because we do tend to find, and myself as anxious as well, we do tend to find that we are preoccupied with the other. We're preoccupied with that person, wonder what they're doing today, why haven't they called me, what are they thinking, should I have said that, what would you have thought about that? It's very much taking the focus and the energy off ourselves when we're doing that, right? So really what you're saying is that these beautiful steps of self-compassion are really part of our practice to bring our focus and our center back on ourselves.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And from my own experience and from my clients' experience as well, when they're able to do that and they start dating someone, they're not putting all their energy into looking on WhatsApp like there's 2 blue ticks. He read it 10 minutes ago. He's not messaged me back. Oh my God, what did I say in the last messages? Oh, maybe I said that wrong. Oh, what should I do now? It just starts to take that away, because even if you notice that you're starting to do that, you're like, hang on a minute. I see what's going on here. My attachment system's getting triggered. That's okay. I'm going to bring the focus back to me. What can I do for myself in this moment? What do I need? And I guess what it does is it just allows you to come to that moment of awareness more quickly, so that you can start to almost course correct. So you can be like, oh, okay, yeah, let's bring the attention and the focus back to myself. I don't need to be sitting looking at my phone worrying about, is he going to message me back or is he not? Because sitting looking at your phone isn't going to change it. It's not going to change how quickly he messages you back or not. So yeah, definitely it is. It's moving that focus from being totally fixated on the other person to being able to just keep bringing the focus back to yourself.
I know so many of the ladies that are watching today have experienced lots of ups and downs as well, lots of disappointments, lots of frustrations on their journey to love. We can almost feel like a bit of a warrior, right? We pick ourselves up, we brush ourselves off, and we're ready to go again. I'm curious, because you're dating at the moment, you're working with your clients that are really in the dating scene. They're actually doing the do and getting the real-time experience of what it's like. Tell us what your experience has been, what's working, what's not working, what are some of the challenges that you find to keep coming up and up for the clients that you're working with?
Absolutely. So I think what I have noticed is, and I've been back on the dating apps the last couple of months, so Tinder and Bumble. So I'm seeing this all real time. So when my clients talk to me about this, I'm like, I get you. I see you. I see it as well. So I think the first thing that I've found is working really well, as I said before, is just that clear, honest communication early on in the conversation. And I think there can be this real fear of, oh my goodness, like I can't say that in the second or third message, it's going to put them off. But actually you're much better just to make sure you're on the same page, because otherwise you could end up messaging someone for days and days and days and days and either never meet up with them, or you do meet up with them. And then when you do meet up in person, you're like, well, I can't ask them this in person because that's way too intense. And before you know it, you're 2 months down the line, you're in a situationship, you don't know what's going on. He probably doesn't know what's going on. Your head's totally blown and you're like, when do I start having this conversation? So I honestly feel that you're going to save yourself a lot of time and energy if you can just establish whether you're on the same page. And a way that I have been actually wording this myself, my clients have been doing, and it's working really well, is just asking, I'm just curious what you're looking for in here. Is it more casual dating or is it a longer term relationship? I like to ask because I prefer not to assume. And I think when you say it in that way, it's actually quite a nice, it's like a lighter, lower pressure way of bringing that question in, rather than being like, so I need to know, like, are you looking for a soulmate relationship? Because that's what I'm looking for. Like, there's ways to be able to communicate in a way where it's still not too intense and it's still light. And do you know what? If somebody, I don't think I've actually had anyone take objection to that question. Like, everyone's always answered either, do you know what, I'm actually just looking for something more casual. And you can say, okay, we're not on the same page. All the best, I wish you well. Or if they're like, yeah, I'm looking for something longer term, then you can start, or not start, but continue the conversation and hopefully get to that point of meeting them in real life if you want to. But definitely just that clear, honest communication. The other thing that I'm finding for myself and my clients is working well is meeting in real life sooner rather than later. Because I think the problem is if we leave I know I used to do this, I'd be like, no, I need to message them for at least a couple of weeks, because otherwise I won't know what to talk about, like when I meet them, because I don't know anything about them. But the problem with that is the longer you leave it, there's gaps and your mind is going to fill in the gaps. And often what our mind does is it fills it in a favorable way. So we build up a picture of somebody. So he might say, oh, I'm really into music. And you're like really into dance music. You're like, oh my God, this is going to be amazing. There's this festival in the summer. And like, he likes dance music too. And we're going to go along and it's going to be great. And then you meet up in real life and he's like, oh, I'm really into rock music. And you're like, hate rock music, like, oh my God. But it's just an example of how our minds will fill in the gaps. So I always say to the women that I'm coaching, obviously, if you feel comfortable, I'm not saying like message someone once and go meet them in real life. If you've messaged them for a day or two or however long that is, and you've got a vibe that you want to meet them and they're not initiating, just ask like, hey, it would be cool to meet up in person and actually get that date locked in. And what I've found for myself is the dating experience feels easier when I arrange to meet people sooner rather than later, because otherwise you can end up investing a lot of time and energy, and then you meet someone in real life and you're like, either there's just not that click, you're just not feeling that, okay, I want to spend more time with them, or you meet them and they're completely different from the picture you've built up in your mind. And it's not really fair on either person, because it's not actually their fault that you've built up that picture. So
and expectation as well, right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Having expectation is inevitably going to lead to disappointment. So meeting up quickly, let go of the expectation and the assumption of how someone's going to be. And I think another really practical tip, again, I've used and my clients use, is when you're meeting somebody, if you find the thought of going on a date makes you so nervous, you're like, oh my God, like potentially this is the love of my life. And you go into it thinking of it like it's a job interview, like he needs to tick all the boxes, and you put a ton of pressure on yourself and on him. Just see it more. What if it was just like going out for coffee with a friend? This is just someone that I'm potentially going to connect with. Because if you're meeting, like, I don't know, someone for the first time and it was on a friendship level, you probably wouldn't put that same expectation on it as you would if it's a date. So if you find that something that comes up for you, just reframe it. Just be like, this is a way of me connecting with new people. And then if you go along and you have a great time and you click, that's brilliant. And if you don't, well, there's nothing lost. It's just, it's another experience. And you can take away something from every single person that you meet, whether it's about what you do or don't want. And also like, how am I showing up? What were the points where I felt uncomfortable, and what was kind of going on for me there? And is there anything that I want to get curious about or go a little bit deeper with?
Beautiful. There's lots of great advice there, Claire. And I'll just recap for the ladies. Just recently, then you mentioned self-reflection, self-evaluation after a date is super important. Like, how did I go? Was I proud of the way that I was really relaxed? And then I complimented him. What would I like to do even more of next time? Looking at someone with a view to being friends. And my thoughts on that are, and most of the ladies know that I did work in a matchmaking agency when I was at university that used to boast their credentials of the agency was that they'd had over 1,000 weddings. What I actually discovered as I'd worked in that company for a while was that not all of those weddings were actually people that had been matched by the agency. A lot of them were actually people that had been matched with someone, encouraged to take a view of making friendships and expanding their circle, and then ended up meeting someone who was the workmate of, you know, or the cousin of, or who they ended up meeting on Friday night drinks because they expanded their social circle and essentially collected new friends. And so, and that happened a lot of the time. It wasn't necessarily a direct match through the agency, but someone that they met through a match through the agency. So that's super important. And the other thing that I was going to mention, I noticed that you talked about asking a man if he'd like to meet up. And I think sometimes there's this uncertainty of like, should I be the one that suggests, or do I just lean back in our messaging and wait for him to suggest that I meet up? And so I love that you've, in some ways, they're really, the old rules don't really exist in this day and age when we haven't even met someone in person, especially. So I do think that it's really useful to actually make the suggestion, or that the two of you meet up. And often my advice on that is have a few messages back and forward and wait until you connect on a certain topic. So you might notice that he has a photo of him snow skiing, or he might make a comment of you and your outfit that you wore to what's that German beer festival called?
Oh my goodness. It's gone out my head as well, but I know the one you mean.
Whatever it might be. Okay, so randomly you might have put in your profile that you love dogs, and then he's like, you know, what sort of dog have you got? And all you really need is just to actually connect on one sort of topic or subject or interest in common. And then it's quite easy to pivot off that after a couple of messages and say, sounds like we'd have plenty to talk about, or sounds like we've got quite a bit in common. It'd be nice to actually meet in person and chat about this a little bit more. Would you like to meet up for a coffee, or are you free over the weekend? And that's how easy it can be for those of you that just don't want to waste a lot of time messaging back and forward. You really can organize to meet up with someone within 4 or 5 or even 3 back and forward messages once you've hit on that sort of topic of interest.
I love that. I think that's such a great tip, to get that topic of interest first, because like you said, then it feels a bit more natural to kind of pivot it into or when are you free, or we'd have lots to talk about. And I think probably 3 or 4 years ago, or more 3 years ago, when I started dating, I was very much like, I don't ask guys out, they ask me out. I don't message first, they message me first. And I actually think that that's starting to shift and change a little bit. And the way that I kind of view it, because before I'd be like, no, he has to ask me out, because like he's in his masculine energy and I want to be in my feminine energy and I'm just receiving. But I think the reality of it is, remember that like men on dating apps as well, they've had rejections, they've had bad experiences, and maybe their confidence has been knocked a little bit as well. And I've met a couple of really, really high quality men recently on dating apps where I have initiated the first meet, and they've been like, oh, I thought it was really cool that like you just suggested meeting up, because I can't really be bothered with the backwards and forwards messaging either. And I think sometimes we have to remember that for men, if they see someone on an app and they're talking to you and they're connecting with you, that maybe it feels a bit scary for them as well to actually make that kind of first move. And what I tend to do is, if I've initiated the first date, I'll let them initiate the second date. So then I will kind of sit back, and if they ask to see me again and I want to, I'll be like, that's brilliant, and then let them take the lead, like allow them then the space to step into their masculine and to take the lead on that. But I think the idea of, oh no, like we need to wait for them to ask us out on the first date and they need to initiate it. I think in this, honestly, in the way that I'm finding the dating world at the moment, my clients are finding it, I don't think it particularly serves us. Like, it's okay, like take the judgment off. It's okay to ask if someone wants to go out for a coffee. And if they don't, well, do you know what? You've saved yourself a lot of time, because otherwise you could have been messaging that guy for weeks waiting for him to ask, and it was never going to happen, because not everybody is using the app with the same intention.
I totally agree with you, Claire. And also too, I think we can have a tendency to make assumptions about men through text, or make judgments of, oh, he can't be really interested, he's been replying really inconsistently, or, you know, he doesn't seem to be putting much effort into his messages. I'm the one that's writing big, long how are yous and what's been happening messages. And I think that's true to a point, but often once you've actually met in person, everything can really change then. You know, lots of guys have said to me they've invested so much time and energy into a woman, connecting with her and messaging her over long periods of time that they were interested in, that just never came to fruition in any way. And so I think it's a really good point that you make, that a lot of men do have, you know, app dating burnout, or have been hurt a little bit as well. What else are you finding that you'd like to share with the ladies?
Okay, so another thing that can be quite useful, and this is like a super, I guess, practical strategy, is with a lot of the apps like Tinder, Bumble, Hinge, you can pay to upgrade to get additional features. And one of the features on those is you can see everybody that has liked you first. Now, if you're somebody that finds that when you're swiping, you kind of get really pulled into that, because they're designed to be addictive, these apps. They're designed to trigger like these dopamine hits in our brains and to keep us on them. If you're someone where you find that you get in the bath and you're like, I'm going to just sit and have a swipe on Tinder for 5 minutes, and you're there like 2 hours later and the water's cold, then sometimes paying to upgrade, even just for a month, to see how you go when you can see everyone that's liked you. Because for me, what I found was it's less of an addictive experience, because you're not swiping and then getting that ping if you've got a match and you're like, oh my God, I've got a match, and there's dopamine and you're excited. It makes it less like a game that you're playing. So if you find you're someone that's almost like wired that way, so you tend to get quite addicted to using things like apps, that can be a bit of a way of using the app more intentionally. It's a bit of a time saver, because you can already see the people that have liked you and you can just work through them rather than working through the pool of absolutely everybody. So it's something where I used it on Tinder for a month and I found it quite helpful. And now I've gone on to Bumble because I like to use the different apps. They've all got slightly different features. The other thing to be aware of is, again, and this may vary depending on where you are in the world, but I think a lot of men are on all 3 apps, or they're on a couple of them, and the amount of effort that goes into bios varies a lot. So I find that Tinder tends to be the one where it's just like a few photos, nothing in the bio, and then you'll see the same person on Bumble and they've actually put a lot of effort into what they've written down there. So sometimes it can be helpful to maybe use a couple of the apps, just because sometimes people are showing up slightly differently on there. And I think there's also the connotations of who's using the app. So Tinder, I think, is probably more traditionally seen as a hookup app. Bumble and Hinge, maybe more for people that are looking for relationships. But having said that, I've met a couple of really, what I would call high quality men on Tinder in the last month. And they've been great, and things haven't gone any further because we're not fully in alignment, but they've been absolutely great guys. So yeah, definitely looking at the difference in the apps and how people are kind of showing up, just having that awareness. And I think the third thing is being intentional. So before you go on to the app, just checking in with yourself. What's my reason for going on the app right now? Is it because I'm genuinely excited about making some potential new connections and going out on some dates? Or am I using this because I'm bored or because I want to numb out? Because that is really going to affect how you feel when you're using them, and also your experiences when you're dating. Because if you're going onto the dating apps from a place of lack or scarcity, or not feeling good about yourself, trying to fill a void, or if you're simply just you've had a really, really stressful day at work and you just want to numb out, that's okay. There's no judgment on that, but be aware that that is why you're going on, and that is going to likely change your experiences and even the type of people that you're swiping on. So if you're having a day when you're just really not feeling that great, you might find that you're swiping on the guys, you're like, he's a fitty, and if he swipes back on me, it's going to give me an ego boost. You're not doing it because you're looking at him thinking, oh, he seems like potentially a great partner and he's got his values on there and there's stuff that we've got in common and he looks interesting. You're doing it because you're like, this is going to boost my self-esteem because he's physically attractive. And then what can happen is you swipe on people and they don't swipe back, and then you feel worse because you're like, oh, like the 5 fitties that I swiped on last night, they've not come up as matches. So what does that mean about me? So just start to get curious, take the judgment off. What's my intention behind using the app right now? And as well, am I in the right energy? Am I excited to do this? Or am I just really feeling crap? Because if you're feeling crap, my advice would be take a step away and do something else. Fill up your own cup. Do something for you. Don't be putting your energy into an app right now.
The energy that we approach app dating or online dating with is actually really going to determine the kind of results that we get, right? I know this is going to show my age, but working as a love coach back in the day when we didn't really communicate on the apps, it was more just online dating and maybe just starting to be app dating. what we would advise our clients to do is to carve out time in the evening just to sit down, to check matches, to respond to, it was mostly emails and sort of internal messaging systems back then. Because what I notice now is that when we match and we start chatting with someone, it is just like text, it's like Messenger. Those chats can come through at any time, and it can be quite distracting and quite consuming. And then that person can be on the, you know, top of mind kind of like all day. And then again, it's actually anxious attachments can start getting preoccupied and all of that. So that can then lead to disappointment and burnout also really quickly. And when you're using these kind of tools. So just a reminder, along with everything that you've said and being intentional about it, to just be mindful to not let that experience consume you if you have a tendency to do that, and maybe just allocate a certain amount of time every day to reply to messages. And if you know that you already have a tendency to get really invested in someone who you haven't even met yet, for example.
Absolutely. I think that is such an important point. And actually, when I use the apps and with my clients, I quite often advise them just to turn the notifications off. So you're not constantly getting that pinging of matches and messages coming through. And like you said, I tend to carve out time. So I'll maybe have 10 or 15 minutes in the morning and 10 or 15 minutes in the evening where I look through, and then I look at matches or I respond to messages. And I think before I used to be like, oh, but I need to respond right away, because then what if he's not interested, because he's going to find somebody else that he finds more attractive. And actually, I think being able to step away from that and to be more intentional, and you realize that everybody's busy as well. Like we've all got work, we've all got things going on. And I think for me, the aim is really to get my clients feeling a bit, first of all, feeling excited about using the apps, but second of all, to feel a bit more relaxed when they're doing it as well, just to like take the pressure off. Because like you said, I think otherwise there's this preoccupation. They get preoccupied with, oh, I need to be messaging back straight away. Why is he not messaging back straight away? What's kind of going on? And again, you're putting all your energy outwardly when you actually need to be putting that energy back into yourself and how you're feeling when you're going through the sort of dating experience.
One of the beautiful aspects of our virtual retreat this year is we actually have experiential workshops that everyone's been enjoying every day. And you've been gracious enough to create a workshop for us that is going to help us to feel into the energy of being relaxed and being self-focused. And tell us a little bit about the workshop that the girls can watch today.
Absolutely. So I am sharing a self-love meditation. I think it's around about 15 to 20 minutes from memory, but it's just a really great way to connect with yourself on a deeper level and to start showing yourself the love that quite often we seek externally, because we have to be able to show ourselves that love first. So first of all, it's going to fill up your cup. And second of all, it's going to get you in that energy of feeling like your cup is full. And when you're in that energy, you're more likely to want to go out there and do the things that you want to do, whether it's doing something for yourself or whether it's going on a dating app or whether it's going meeting a friend, whatever that is. And I just think that self-relationship is such an integral part of life. I genuinely believe it's the foundation for everything. And when we have that strong foundation in place, it then means we can start to build and create the other things that we desire in life. So I really hope that everybody enjoys it that listens, and I'd love to hear if anyone has any feedback or you want to share your experience of how that was for you.
Thank you so much, Claire. You can find Claire's beautiful meditation. Just scroll down a little bit below today's video and make sure that you carve out some time to do that, because it's absolutely beautiful. Are there any final thoughts that you'd like to share with our audience, Claire?
Absolutely. This is the one thing that I always love to share because I think it's so powerful. Like, you are the only person that you're guaranteed to be in a relationship with for the rest of your life. And this is why self-relationship is so important. So make sure that you're treating yourself with the same love and compassion and respect that you treat everybody else with, because I think so often we give outwardly and we're not giving to ourselves. So never underestimate the power of self-relationship, because when you have that strong self-relationship, you're going to start to attract in people that also have a strong self relationship as well. And that's what you want in a partnership. Like, you want somebody that's grounded in themselves and really knows themselves on a deeper level. So know that by doing the work on your self relationship, it's bringing you closer to your soulmate relationship, even if that's maybe not a direct correlation that you've made up until this point. It really, really is. So yeah, all about the self-love and the self-relationship and working on that.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Make sure if Claire's message has resonated with you today, or you'd like to connect with her, she's all over Instagram and doing some really fun stuff. And all of her social media links and everything about Claire is actually linked up below the video today. Wow, such a great conversation. And again, one of my favorite people to speak to. It's been such an honor and pleasure to have you on the virtual retreat, and obviously to have been part of your journey as well over the past few months.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so grateful to be here.
Thanks everyone for tuning in. We will see you again tomorrow for another class on the Love Breakthrough Virtual Retreat. Bye for now.